Welcome to the Haven Collective. This is our first Beacon teaching. In other words, it's the first of our teachings that's designed for you to watch sometime during the week before you gather with your Beacon group this coming Sunday. And so today we're going to be talking about the story of Jesus appearing to his disciples after he was raised from the dead on the evening of Easter Sunday. This was in John 20, so hopefully you got a chance to read that. If not, it's in the links in the description for the video. But I want to talk about fear. So many of you know I'm a huge horror movie fan, and so I get this question all the time. What's the scariest movie you've ever seen? And for me, it's an easy answer. I mean, I have a lot of scary movies that I like, but the movie that scared me the most ever was The Ring. It came out in 2002. I saw it in theaters probably like 6 weeks before I graduated from college. And I remember coming home just like almost bathed in sweat. I was so afraid. And I went to bed that night and I couldn't fall asleep because I was afraid. And I remember so vividly laying in my bed and staring at my closet door. 49% of my brain was so ashamed. I was saying, you're almost a graduate from college, you're about to go out into the world as a real adult, and you're laying here afraid to close your eyes because of a silly movie that you know wasn't real. The other 51% of my brain, though, was convinced that as soon as I closed my eyes, Samara was going to crawl out of my closet and eat my face. And so I laid there, I think, until probably about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning, paralyzed with fear, but also soaked in my own shame. That's what fear does to us. It's a core emotion, which I know those of us who are Inside Out fans who are super excited about the sequel that's about to come out, we know that, right? Fear is the purple guy. He's the one who's one of the core 5 emotions that are hardwired into our brain by evolution. That means that we cannot control how we experience them. They happen to us. What we can control is how we respond to them. So in this story that we read in John 20, we find that the weekend of Jesus's execution, he was crucified on Friday, the disciples on Sunday are hiding. Because again, as followers of someone who was an accused insurrectionist, they could all be in danger of being executed as well. So they're hiding in an upper room, they're all huddled together, and John specifically tells us they're hiding there because they were afraid. And then Jesus appears to them. He shows them his crucifixion wounds to prove that it's really, in fact, him. And then he does something really weird. He says, "Peace be with you." And then he says it again, and when he says it the second time, he breathes on them. This image is something that I love so much because it gets at how fear paralyzes us. When we feel afraid, what do? We want to hide. We want to stay small. We want to close ourselves off from the world and from the things that are making us afraid. But then Jesus enters into that fear and he recreates the creation story in Genesis 2, where God forms a human out of the clay and breathes the spirit or the breath of life into the human and brings that human to life. So here, in this space where the disciples are huddled, afraid for their lives, mourning their teacher who has died, Jesus appears in this impossible way. I mean, not only has he been raised from the dead, but apparently he can walk through walls and enter into locked rooms, right? There's no telling what he can do now. But when he declares peace over them, he doesn't just say the words, he breathes onto them. And when he breathes onto them, John tells us that that's when they received the Holy Spirit. And so the Holy Spirit transformed their fear into courage. It made them bold. It made them courageous. It made them unafraid. In fact, the Spirit enabled them to overcome the evolutionary hardwiring that bakes fear into our brains, and it enabled them to live these bold, courageous lives in the face of the very things that they were afraid of. Every single one of the original apostles ends up being martyred for their faith. And tons of other Christians were killed in those early years because of their choice to follow Jesus, and not just follow Jesus, but be loud about it, be excited about it. I love this picture of transformation. So let's talk about where we see fear in our world right now. It's an election year. And we know, for instance, that the border in the south part of our state is a huge issue that politicians on all sides of the aisles are already talking about. What I want to challenge you to do is to listen to how they talk about the people on the border. Are they treating them as humans? Are they respecting their dignity and their inherent worth as those who bear the image of God? Or are they using the kind of rhetoric that dehumanizes these people made in God's image and turns them into something monstrous in order to trigger our fear response? Are they talking about them as criminals or as animals? Because when politicians use that kind of rhetoric to talk about other humans, it is specifically designed to manipulate us. They want to activate the fear response that's hardwired into our brain so that we shut down, so that we want to close our doors or close our borders and hide, so that we don't see someone who we don't know as a potential friend, but as a probable enemy. That's what fear can do. And I think we see that in an election cycle, but we see it in our own personal lives as well. We see how when we are afraid to take risks, when we are uncertain, we get closed down, we get small. And friends, we are not created to live small lives. That's why Jesus breathes into us the gift of the Holy Spirit to recreate us. Paul calls us new creations who have the ability to live these bold, courageous lives, to feel the fear, but not allow fear to control us, but instead to be controlled by the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead and live those same kinds of bold lives that those first disciples did. So in your beacons this week, I hope you can talk about how fear keeps you stuck. The ways that we feel fear and the ways that that traps us. And I hope you can meditate on the good news that the Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead, the same Spirit that God gives to all of us, enables us to live big, bold, courageous lives.